Welcome to the Jyotish project. My name is Sachin Sharma, and in this video, we're going to cover Jyotish is not Vedic astrology. So let's get right into it. So, the term Vedic astrology was introduced and popularized in the late 20th century by pioneers like Sri B.V. Raman and Sri K.N. Rao and Sri David Frawley and many more people. And it was sort of these were the main primary voices in the field. So, it sort of they started using the word Vedic astrology much more than anyone else and became a mainstream thing. So, at that time, it served a very important purpose to translate and present Jyotish in a language that resonated with global audiences, particularly in the West, where the word Vedic evoked authenticity, spiritual depth, and alignment with India's sacred traditions. Right, so it was an important sort of need of the moment to have like a word that would allow Jyotish to be exported, not just exported to the West, but also to be understood by the westernized peoples within India itself. So it gave a resonance of some sort. So this framing helped preserve, legitimize, and reintroduce Jyotish at a time when its standing, both in India and abroad, was under threat. It created bridges, and for that, deep respect is due. So it was meant as a bridge, an accessible name that could help people unfamiliar with the tradition grasp its broad contours. And it did it very successfully, as we all know. This was perfectly fine as a starting point. However, over time, the source itself sometimes forgets its deeper origins, especially with the TikTokification, Instagramification, and now Chat GPTification, or you could say artificial intelligenceification. We have entered the realm of what I call astrology with a double S. So it's as if the stalk of a mighty tree grew so far from its roots that it began to lose sight of where it first drew its nourishment. When Jyotish is reduced merely to astrology, Hindu astrology, Vedic astrology, all these kinds of terms, it risks being seen only as a cultural artifact or a set of predictive tools, or it becomes this religious idea. If anything, it could be Sankhya Jyotish or Sanatana Jyotish or Sanatana astrology, some so I don't know, like, but it still gets into religion. But Jyotish is about metaphysics. It's about psychometaphysics. So missing its profound metaphysical and psycho spiritual essence, its all encompassing and all inclusive nature. It is the missing method of metaphysics, and it does not matter what you identify with. It works for everyone, just like yoga. It's a formulaic sort of thing, and if you practice it, try to study it, understand it, and apply it, it would work no matter which part of the world you're from, what you identify with, what's your geopolitical situation, and it does not matter. And we in India understand this, reclaiming the original meaning, but it needs to be said more often and more clearly, I believe. Reclaiming the original meaning helps us reconnect with the roots, ensuring the entire tree remains healthy and alive. So that's the effort of this particular video. So Jyotish is much deeper, complex, nuanced, and philosophically unifying than astrology, Hindu astrology, Vedic astrology, and any such term. Jyotish is a metaphysical discipline grounded in that which is heard, Shruti. The sort of the source of the ideas comes from a certain thing that is part of yoga philosophy, and not yoga philosophy as Patanjali's philosophy, but yoga is any system, whether it's Rishi Gautama's uh, idea of yoga, anyone who's trying to transcend the body mind complex or trying to experiment with their consciousness. So the ideas in Jyotish, the system, the mathematics, the techniques, the precision, the sophistication with which it has all been laid out, is something. It is Shruti texts. These are Shrota, sort of. They come from, and it doesn't mean Shruti as an oral transmission, as it's coming from the teacher to student, and then from then. And this is also another mistake we've made. We think that these are oral, sort of, this word has become so common, like it's thrown around so much. Oral transmission, tradition. It is a practiced, lived tradition. It's not just oral as if like mouthing words. It is a practiced tradition. And not just that, Shruti is not just heard in the sense of someone is speaking and you're hearing, it's a meditative hearing. There's a certain types of yoga practices, nada yoga, and different kinds. There's different ways to access metaphysical knowledge, and all the energetic systems, acupressure, acupuncture, all the nadis and all the stuff that we use, it's not revealed. You cannot see the nadi, but it's been laid out, and it has a certain way the pressure points in it. So these are received in deeper states of consciousness. It's a different source. Its epistemology is different. So that obviously then makes it seem like pseudoscience, because science works with a certain, modern Western science works with a certain way of experimenting stuff. But that's why I call it a discipline. That's why I do not use the word science that much. It's a sort of a discipline with its own method, its own internal logic, designed to map how our awareness moves. And one does not need to believe in it. You need to practice it, study it, practice it, and come to a direct realization of it. Just how yoga is designed to map how our awareness moves through time and form, conditioned by karmic impressions and imprints within the subtle psycho-energetic fields, and shaped by psycho-metaphysical forces called the grahas. Not planets. They're not planets, they're grahas. A graha is a very specific word with a very specific philosophical uh, implication, which really is the foundation of what Jyotish is talking about, the idea of a graha. So it has its own language, own internal logic, one own ways of testing and experiencing it. It is a whole ecosystem with its own epistemology, ontology, phenomenology, so on and so forth. It is a method of perception, a psycho-metaphysical tool that reveals the underlying structure of reality and consciousness, and relationship of consciousness with space-time, inviting us to understand ourselves and our place in the universe more clearly. In this video, we will explore what Jyotisha truly means, how it differs from popular astrology, and why understanding its essence is key to unlocking its power. So, here's a brief overview. We are going to cover almost these sort of six ideas, six sections: lack of scholarship and Eurocentric lens, common misunderstandings of Jyotish, Jyotish as a study of light. Jyoti is equal to light, is equal to the sun, is equal to the Atman. It is not just astrology, the psycho-metaphysical essence and true scope of Jyotish. So I'm really sort of excited for this video, but also sort of you see, it's not a standard video. It's a video which makes me a little fired up. It brings my sort of Kuja energy to the forefront. My Mars sort of, like, it's like, here we need to work with our own system, our own language a bit better. And it's an effort. It's a small effort. It's a humble effort. I might be making a lot of mistakes in my understanding, and for me, it's more important that we get into a dialogue to fix this rather than point fingers at each other, which happens a lot in when you're trying to course correct. uh, the idea is not that I want to course correct. The idea is that we all have been trying to course correct. It's just that we are not sort of doing it consciously. Every time we pick up Jyotish and fall in love with it and try to fix the system, or try to work with the system, try to work with a technique or an idea, we are trying to course correct, each one of us, whether we are on Instagram, on TikTok, or whatever people are doing. Uh, Whichever book you're reading on Jyotish, of whichever Western author, that's what we've been trying to do. We're trying to bring this system back to its original form, slowly and steadily, with each insight. So let's have a dialogue about Jyotish in the right format, and then consciously, and see like where we can go with this, how we can improve the state of where we are at. So, lack of scholarship and the Eurocentric lens. So, what is Eurocentrism? Because this is a common frustration for a lot of academia that has been academic work that has been done for different disciplines throughout the world, indigenous disciplines, and so the word Eurocentric is used a lot. So we'll just take a brief moment to understand why what this is, and why this is not a good thing. So Eurocentrism is the intellectual and cultural tendency. It's a psychological sort of a bias. It's a tendency that a person has to interpret the world through a European lens, treating European thought, history, and values as a normative or superior standard against which all other cultures are measured. Right. So, for instance, Stoicism. Right. So, Stoicism has become so big in the South Asian world, and yoga philosophy, yama niyama, everything is rooted in Stoicism. And what they have is, for example, Epictetus, like Marcus Aurelius and stuff, and they just have one textbook of this one king, and they are utilizing and modifying that book in thousands of ways and extracting so much out of it, right? And here we have so much stuff, material on Stoicism, which is our own system, which is not even Stoicism, but we are sort of not using it. We are sort of looking towards the West in that way to understand their philosophy, because we've been sort of uh, conditioned ourselves. We're not coming into consciousness that there was an Eurocentric scholarship that happened for hundreds of years, and through obviously colonization, which has literally colonized our mind. And here I use the word colon as colon, like not like that, right? Not a colony, but like you've become like your brain's turned into ass. So, anyway, the point is, it often assumes that non European systems, whether philosophical, scientific, or spiritual, are derivative, underdeveloped, or in need of validation through Western categories. And this happened way too much. All of the texts from the east were taken to the west. All the Sanskrit texts were taken to the west in the 17th, 16th, 17th, 18th century. And they were sort of Sanskrit departments were set up throughout Europe, in Germany, in different places, and research was done. All the interesting ideas were extracted, and a lot of philosophy was written, which became European philosophy of this sort of whatever you find in the 18th, 19th century related to linguistics, this, that. And it was sort of resupplied back to the East. So, in academic studies, Eurocentrism means prioritizing Western historical frameworks such as Greco Roman origins, even when studying non Western traditions. Right? Everything is originated in a Greco Roman world. Greeks and Romans, that sort of ideas, all the ideas that we have come from there. So they also say for Jyotish, the idea of Rashi's signs, which is Aries or Taurus, all of these 12. Indians did not know about this. They had a nakshatra system, and the Greeks taught us how to do this through Yavana Jataka and stuff. It's wrong. It's a completely wrong understanding. It's not true. We knew about the 12 divisions since it's given in Rig Veda. And Rig Veda, if now they are revising it and giving it its more accurate date when this text was from. So it goes back so long ago when most of Europe probably did not even know how to write. So using Western epistemologies, example, empiricism, rationalism, historicism, as the only valid tools of interpretation. So, framing non European knowledge systems as borrowings, corruptions, or local adaptations of European ideas. Example, Pingree's views of Jyotish as Hellenistic astrology in Sanskrit, which is absurd, appalling. Ignoring or devaluing indigenous languages, metaphysics, oral, which is practiced traditions, and other subtler spiritual practices as legitimate sources of knowledge, producing scholarship about a tradition without engaging in dialogue with the tradition and its living practitioners. So this is the problem with Eurocentrism, and it's a real thing. It's not that we are getting worked up about stuff that is not true, did not happen. It's very real. If you read these books, you would the way things have been referred to, the way the people of these indigenous places have been referred to, the kind of interpretation that is being done, it is act. And the problem is that, so here's the problem. On the at least they tried argument, someone need, at least someone did it. It wasn't required. They needed to do it for their own universities. People were still practicing here. Everything is sort of okay. Like, it's not that Jyotishis weren't doing Jyotish. It's not that people weren't doing yoga until someone wrote a book on yoga philosophy. I call it a philosophy, not a darshana. It's a darshana, which is very different than the idea of philosophy, which is love of wisdom, osophy. Darshana is a different word. It comes from drish, to see, perception. It comes from sort of this idea of to come into a direct experience of an understanding of someone, to see someone's how some to engage in someone's perspective. And right, so wisdom is jnana. It's not love of philosophy. For us is not love of wisdom. Jnana, gyan is something which is a metaphysical sort of idea that you derive through a deep yogic practice, where your consciousness itself is a state of jnana. So it's a whole world of the whole dialogue one enters even through these basic ideas. So the claim that Eurocentric scholars at least made an effort to preserve Jyotish misses the point entirely. Preservation without understanding is not preservation, it is distortion. And distortion is what has happened, and we'll see how. To catalog sacred knowledge while stripping it of its metaphysical, psychological, and spiritual essence is not revival but reduction. So it was reduced, it was oversimplified, it was spoken of as like it comes from the Greco Roman world and it all comes from Europe, or these people didn't know how to do stuff. Like they're these sort of uh, primitive people who sit on the floor, eat with their hands kind of idea. When a living tradition is dissected through alien categories, seen as derivative, mechanical, or merely historical, as a myth, right? Mythology, the idea that it's myth. It's not true. It's as we've been discussing in the Rahu Ketu files in the lectures about the psychomythic framework and the sophistication with which Jyotishis approached it. There is no longer being studied, it is being rewritten. So it has been rewritten in a lot of ways, and Jyotish itself has been rewritten. The narrative that keeps running when you open a Wikipedia page, when you go to Jyotish Shastra, Hindu astrology, Vedic astrology, all these Wikipedia pages, there's a certain narrative that's running. It's calendrical, ritual, sacrifice, and this idea of like distortion. It's all distorted. Effort alone is not virtue, especially when it reinforces colonial epistemology, because they didn't know how these guys were doing what they were doing. So they were seeing it from how they do things. So if they are stargazers, if they figured out their astrology by looking at the sky, they thought Indians probably did it the same way. But we did not. It was Shruti. It was a meditative way of doing it. It was a certain way of yoga which got us that information. Patanjali Yoga sutras really express. If you want to know all about moon, do practice samyama on the moon. Chapter 3, practicing samyama on the certain different kinds of samyamas, like sanyam. So different kinds of sanyam, you get a different kind of realization of about the nature of reality, about the metaphysics and stuff. And that's what this is. Like, if you really learn Jyotish, you'll see this is something that you cannot figure out. They are what they're doing, dividing space time and going into vargas and stuff. This is something else. And silences indigenous actual experiential, practical, grounded voices. So real scholarship honors the worldview it studies. Anything less is appropriation under the guise of academic rigor, right? So, and people usually use this argument. At least they tried. You guys not even doing anything. We didn't need to do it. We didn't need to do this. It's not that we weren't doing it. We were doing it. Not we had our own systems, or own gurukulas, own way of learning, or we had this whole guru shishya understanding of relating to one particular teacher and learning the system. There's a whole structure around which everything was built, but it wasn't built around their structure. And this argument itself is a very Eurocentric argument. So this argument that you guys didn't do it because you can't see that it was being done, it's just not it's just that it is not being done in their way. So it seems like it is not being done, because anything that is not done in that particular way, it's not being done. So on Pingri, Yano and the limits of scholarly authority. So this is a very important word. Person David Pingri, Michio Yano, Japanese student of David Pingree and stuff. So the only widely recognized academic scholarship on Jyotish today comes from a small group of philologists and historians: David Pingree, Michio Yano, and their colleagues like Kim Lofker, Charles Burnett, and Jan Gonda, which is very famous, also done a lot of work on Sanskrit works. All of these names, and I personally don't find their work very insightful at all, actually. uh, very useful because they've collected and sort of systematized everything, put everything out there for us to criticize now. That's the only way we could pay homage to their work. Their work, while meticulously organized and textually rich, represents an entirely external viewpoint. External in the sense that they have no grounding in their practices. They have no idea what they're talking about. Fundamentally disconnected from the lived metaphysical and psycho-spiritual heart of Jyotish. They treat it not as a pathway to insight or liberation, but as a fragment of Greco-Babylonian transmission history. So they see Jyotish coming from Greek, Babylonians, Islamic. It traveled like in their own sort of, they had their own way how it traveled to India, and that's how we learned. And we had some fragmented understanding of the astrology. Sort of, we had this fragmented system of Jyotish, but we didn't know the horary astrology, the understanding of the psyche and stuff like that, which is absurd. A clear example is of this distortion appears in the studies in the history of the exact sciences in honor of David Pingree. That's the name of the book. They honored David Pingree, where the authors claim that the Indian concept of graha, a cosmic force that seizes consciousness, arose only after Hellenistic idea of planetary deities entered India. They suggest that Indian thinkers hastily invented grahashanti rituals in response to foreign influence, implying that even the most integral and indigenous practices of Jyotish were mere reactions of borrowings. This is not scholarship seeking understanding, it is a colonially tinted historiography. That's what it is. It's not scholarship. This is no one sitting with a Jyotishi and sitting down and practicing Jyotish, learning from a guru. Like, they have no process there. It's just them reading a Sanskrit verse, a language, translating it with loosely translating it because the context is not there of the discipline. So if they're taking the word guna, which can mean one thing in Ayurveda and it can mean another thing in Sankhya, they don't have the context of the discipline. They just have translated and given some. They have a certain team of people, which all the information is online. They used to, it's an old sort of scholars of the 90s, 80s, 90s and stuff. And that's what they sort of that's their way of understanding and interpreting everything. And it's absurd. Like, their reading of these things is really not okay. Their focus on Greek influence, Yavana Jataka, Pancha Siddhantika, and stuff, and mathematical computation neglects Jyotisha's philosophical depth, psycho-spiritual purpose, and indigenous epistemology rooted in Sankhya, Yoga, and Dharma Shastras. It's rich. It's not. We are not isolated disciplines. Jyotish, Ayurveda, Yoga, or just one harmonious symphony. But because of this Eurocentric idea, how departments are formed, that psychology department is different than philosophy department, and medicine department is different, and it's not how it is. We have specifications, like what an Ayurveda expert can do, what a Vaidya can do, is not what a Jyotishi does exactly. But a Jyotishi knows Ayurveda, and an Ayurvedic physician ideally used to know Jyotish. So it was always one, and they were all practitioners of dhyan, samadhi, and stuff like that. They were all doing some sort of dhyana. It's lost. It's distorted. It's all compartmentalized, and this whole way of how European scholarship, European academia works is also sort of taken in here, and that complex thought that we engaged in is gone. And this also happened. Not just, we cannot blame them for everything. We ourselves sort of started falling into this sort of ideas over like 1,000 years of atrocities. A lot of texts were lost. A lot of like when you're constantly being invaded, the collective consciousness doesn't get the continuity it needs to build its scholarship. Things, you're just protecting the leftover texts constantly, or you're just there's no, like, if there was a certain research that happened for 50 years, 80 years, and suddenly the kingdom changes, new laws come, and the whole paradigm shifts. So, and it's not, it was a sort of a degenerative stage from, like, let's say 500 AD to about now, up until even now, I would say. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? I probably am wrong. So they portray ancient Indian astrologers as technicians or stargazers, ignoring their role as contemplative metaphysicians, yogis, working with karma, consciousness, and liberation. They don't know, they don't speak of prarabdh, they don't speak of Jyotish. They have no, like, references there. They're just really poorly written works. They've just organized and compiled all the text and names and stuff, which is useful for us. It's still available online, but we can use at least their works like that. So their work rarely engages with living traditions, oral transmission, or the experiential use of Jyotish as a tool of self awareness. This reflects the limits of classical philology when applied without the dialogue with the tradition itself, with the discipline itself. Because tradition, again, evokes certain resistance in a lot of people's mind. It's a discipline, and disciplines are somewhat traditional. To truly understand Jyotish, we must go beyond transmission histories and enter the realm of lived wisdom. We need to relocate the sutras and fix it. Meditative insight and psycho-metaphysical inquiry. Such narratives, while flawed, are still valuable because they consolidate misunderstandings into clear form, offering serious students of Jyotish the opportunity to challenge, clarify, and course correct the discourse. So that's one thing. So we can at least get that from their efforts and let them not go in vain. We are a generous people with ahimsa as the foundational precept. So we must remember that while fixing anyone's errors, our fundamental precept has always been ahimsa. There are no thinkers, no scholarship on Jyotish that is done by Jyotishis. At least nothing I could find. If you know of some good scholarly work on Jyotish that is being done, please share in the comments, and I would absolutely love it. I've been looking for it. There are renditions and sort of like regurgitating what's already there. There's nothing useful, just popular Vedic astrology books which have nothing new in them. Wikipedia provides all of that information for free anyway. Or a lot of the scholarship is just like popular astrology books are cited. Like when you see it, it'll be like a book like The Greatness of Saturn, or like one of these books that everyone has come across while studying what we call Vedic astrology. We've always found these sort of that's what is being referenced a lot of the times. What little scholarship we have is just technique finding to predict the future, which is not even the purpose of Jyotish, to say the least. The whole point of Jyotish is to make the future less predictable, if anything. But because of its dissociation with the rest of the philosophical corpus of India, what we have is another astrologer with their own truth. That's what we've found, like that we've just created a tarot like system with astrology, that every astrologer speaks their own language, own logic. Two astrologers can't agree on anything, neither technique, neither calculation, nothing. There's no common lived vocabulary, no common language. They are just tribes that are formed, like small groups, and those groups only speak to their own people. Any engagement, cross group engagement, it threatens uh, the group. It threatens their psyche about their understanding of the system, or something happens. I don't know why this is the case. I mean, I have some theories about it, but they're just theories, right? So, Jyotish is not a derivative calendrical science used for sacrificial rituals, primitive rituals, and idol worship, which is a very derogatory way of understanding a psychometaphysically very complex mechanism. This whole idea of idol worship it's a very, firstly, it's not idols, and it's not worship in the Western Christian sense, Abrahamic sense. Bhakti is Bhakti is a psychotherapeutic practice. Bhakti is being done whether you do it off a metaphysical principle, or do you do bhakti of an enemy that you're a fan of, or some sort of thing. The capacity to devote yourself is active. We just do it in a certain way, which which cultivates consciousness in a certain way. So this is not the right way to speak of these things. If it is not your cup of chai, then don't drink it, is my personal take on this. If it's not your cup of chai, don't, like, why? No one is asking you to drink it. But if it is, then try to make a good karak sort of cup of tea. Try to make it good. Put the right kind of herbs and stuff. Put some elaichi. Make it taste good at least. Common misunderstandings of Jyotish. Many today reduce Jyotish simply to Vedic astrology, imagining it as a set of star signs, fortune telling, and vague personality typing. And now people are even saying that, oh, artificial intelligence, chat GPT is so good. It's not. It's absolutely horrible. It's a disaster because human intelligence hasn't figured out Jyotish right now. So artificial intelligence is just a massive, large language model. It's just taking all the information and making logical conclusions using that. So if the data itself is wrong, then what's produced out of the data is also wrong. If the right kinds of questions are asked, it could be refined at some point, but still the source would be Shruti. It'd be your own inner wisdom that would then go into artificial intelligence and then be processed by it. And then it will be like, oh, artificial intelligence now knows Jyotish better than humans. But it knows because humans heard, like, felt like through their own practice, experience, and understanding, they sort of put it into the system. Right now, it's horrible, right? Absolutely not okay. Jyotish is often confused with primitive stargazing or early astronomy, assumed to be just pattern recognition of twinkling lights in the sky. This conflates it with the cultural superstition or folklore, ignoring its deeper inner revelatory origin. And this was the narrative around astrology in general. They are like geocentric, narcissistic, pagan. All of these ideas were the Western ideas, which then, because Jyotish was started to be called Vedic astrology, all the burdens that we have with the term astrology that come from the West, Vedic astrology, which is Jyotish, also had to bear those burdens. So they did a pseudo scientific, like they did a nonsensical experiment on astrology in the West in certain universities. And it was a horrible experiment, very poorly conducted, using a poorly constructed system of Western astrology. And then, because Jyotish is called Vedic astrology also starts falling into the same umbrella. But Jyotish is not like that. And Jyotish now that is coming up, and what we are developing, what you might be developing, whoever is listening, and what I'm trying to figure out, all the teachers, all the colleagues, everyone's trying to figure out, is not like Western astrology. It's much more sophisticated. So the modern Western use of astrology tends to evoke skepticism because the popularization of sun sign horoscopes and unscientific predictions which have little connection to the original system. And we all know of these popular sun sign books. Absolutely horrible. Many critics categorize Jyotish as a pseudoscience due to lack of falsifiability, absence of empirically proven mechanisms, and failure under control tests. This view, common in Western academia, dismisses the discipline as superstition or irrational. Jyotish has historically been entwined with astronomy, medicine, and philosophy, but Enlightenment rationalism severed this connection, relegating astrology to the margins of science and scholarly discourse. So it became this like fringe science and pseudoscience, and people with low IQ practice astrology. And then you start calling Jyotish Vedic astrology, and it becomes just another astrology of the Vedic type, and the whole thing gets distorted. Jyotish and its connection to Bhagavad Gita, Sankhya, all the beautiful literature that we have completely gets distorted when you start calling it Vedic astrology. It doesn't even, Rig Veda Rig Ved, Sam, Yajur don't even, Vedang Jyotish is there, part of the Veda, but it does not tell you anything about Jyotish. It tells you certain calculations, used certain about seasons and nakshatra and the division of the space time, which is also a very critical part. Vedang Jyotish also gives us certain information which can completely paradigm shift Jyotish and its calculations. It's something that would be needs a video of its own. Jyotisha's classification as Vedic astrology or Indian astrology is often too broad or misapplied, obscuring its unique metaphysical focus on awareness, time, and consciousness rather than mere prediction. Many practitioners and believers conflate Jyotish with New Age or mystical belief systems, or treat it as a casual hobby, which is really bad because a lot of people retire and start practicing Vedic astrology. And then you can't do justice to a subject if it's just a hobby in your life. If you want to be a, and then they are the authors, they are the ones who have given us all the translations, let's say, of Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra and stuff, and they are not, the Sanskrit translation of the Sanskrit words, the sutras, is very haphazardly done translation. Some of them are even wrong. And some of the corrupt sutras are not even written as like this sutra might be. It's just given as like, oh, it's there, so we're just writing on it. There's no like deeper thought in it, or mystical belief system, or treated as a casual hobby, losing sight of its disciplined philosophical depth. Confirmation bias and cognitive heuristics influence believers to selectively validate astrology, which further clouds objective understanding and critiques. And for sure, like, and I agree with all of these biases that astrologers have. And astrology, that's why, is sort of doing more harm than good, in my personal opinion. The net effect is a little negative than positive at the moment, I believe. The failure to account for astronomical realities such as axial precision of the equinox, planetary influences by some modern astrologer leads to internal inconsistencies and weakens Jyotisha's credibility in scientific eyes. The sidereal tropical debate and all of these debates, and not being able to come to a conclusion, not being able to understand the philosophy of the discipline itself, and that's why we are not able to come to a conclusion. The idea is right now that, oh, both tropical and sidereal both are they both work. If we understand the philosophy of Jyotish and what we mean by both of them work, both of them can't work. One has to work. It doesn't work that way. We're discussing space. You're discussing geometry and mathematics. It's not that you can meditate like this also and like that also. Like if you do this particular specific meditation technique for a very specific thing, you can also do it like that, and you'll get the same result. You won't. If you do a certain pranayam, it will have a very specific effect on your body mind. Jyotish is very specific. The whole idea was for mathematical precision. If you study the subject, they're trying to create a uh, formula for metaphysics. They're trying to come up with a mathematical formula for the subtle things in life. And it is definitely not, both cannot be true. Then the truth is sort of one here, and it has to be figured out. So, despite widespread skepticism in the West, Jyotish remains deeply respected, taught, and applied in India and other cultures, where it continues as a living tradition intertwined with culture and spiritual life. So, there's still a lot of power and value in Jyotish, and a lot of work is being done in this direction by so many brilliant Jyotishis. Understanding also arise Misunderstandings also arise because of the misuse and commercialization of astrology, which is okay. Commercialization is okay, and capitalism here is live in that kind of structure. It's completely okay. The point is that's not the goal. The love of Jyotish is not there. It's become like, oh, let's open a yoga school because there's so many foreigners here. You know how like this kind of ideas come. You have nothing to do with yoga. You don't practice it. You are overwhelmed by anxiety in your personal life. You haven't figured out basic pranayama. Nothing. None of the practice is part of your life. But because you have a business mind, and you can just create a yoga center, and then because you see an opportunity, you're going to use it, and you're going to, because of that lack of groundedness, you're going to hire a certain kind of teacher that you don't know if they're good or not because your own understanding of yoga is not clear, and then you're going to teach the wrong system to all the people who are sort of trusting you, relying on you, and giving you a lot of their hard-earned money, and that's how it gets corrupt. So it's crony capitalism. It's not compassionate capitalism that seeks to capitalize and share the resources into a community. It's crony. It's not good. Jyotish is fundamentally a discipline of inner perception and psychometaphysics, a study of the self and consciousness within time. And self here is Atman. And self is a very widely used translation for all practical Western like sporting purposes. But Atman is Atman. Self with a capital S for all practical purposes, but it's a complex idea. And consciousness within time, and not merely a set of predictive formulae, or horoscope readings. Jyotish is a study of light. So let's understand what Jyotish is. The term Jyotish comes from the Sanskrit root Jyoti, meaning light or illumination, combined with the suffix ish and refers to ish, which relates to connection or belonging. Thus, Jyotish literally means that which pertains to light, the discipline of knowledge of light. Discipline or knowledge of light. But this light is not metaphorical or vague. It is a fundamental condition of visibility and experience. The fact that I am this empirical fact that I'm having an experience of this spectrum of light, and things are visible because of a certain principle that is the sun, without which we are in pitch dark vacuum, is the very foundation of philosophical foundation of Jyotish. The term Jyotish is very carefully chosen to express this discipline. So, Jyotish is not merely about the stars or the night sky, because they say Jyoti is light, and they were probably stargazers, so they were just looking at the sky. So, those are the lights they were referring to as agrarian primitive stargazers in their free time after having harvested their crop. They had nothing to do, and they were just laying down and looking at the motion of the stars and trying to make connections between the heavens and earth. That's again European reading. Probably other astrologies of the world were derived that way. The Jyotish wasn't. It is study of light as a source and process of awareness, and it becomes very clear as you study Jyotish. When you understand what the kinds of things and the kinds of calculations and what they're trying to do, you like, this is not something that you can just look at the sky and figure out. This illumination is what enables the eye of the Veda. It's the eye of the Veda. It's one of the Vedanga, six Vedangas. Jyotish is the eye to see the structure of reality, time, and consciousness. In other words, Jyotish is the knowledge of the light that reveals the source behind all manifestation and perception. As the purpose of Jyotish to come into awareness of yourself, of your structures. So Jyoti is equal to light, is equal to the sun, is equal to Atman. So Jyoti is not just any light, not merely the stars scattered in the sky. It refers specifically to the sun, the singular sovereign source of light in our solar system, to Surya. All other light is borrowed, reflected, or secondary. This is not just an astronomical fact, it is a profound metaphysical statement, which we see in Parashrahora, Briyat Parashrahora Shastra, what it's called right now. Sarva Atma cha Divanatha. And the next part is Mana Kumud Bandavaha. So Manaha Kumud Bandava, the friend of the lotus is Manas. Sarva Atma the Jivanatha. The maker of the day is the Atma of all. Sarva Atma, the consciousness, that which the all illuminating principle, underlying consciousness which keeps everything going. As the maker of the day, sun is being referred to as the Divanatha, the Nath of the Diva, the daylight, the divine time. Div, the root is Div, which is the same root as Deva. The sun is the fundamental field in which all experience arises, illuminating not only the visible world but also the existential and psychological realms. To say Jyoti is the sun means that Jyotish is not the study of outer light alone, but the study of the source of illumination itself, which is you experiencing reality. The sun is not, you're not under the influence of the sun. You itself experiencing reality is sun. You're an ontologically, structurally, they're showing you the structure of being. There is a sun itself that you are. It's located within the field, the birth chart. This is it is the study of pure awareness, the self that sees, and all phenomena that appears within that seeing. Jyotish is a discipline of perception, participation, and presence, centered not just on the sun as a planetary graha. It's not like that's how it's said. Planetary. It's not this. Sun is told as a graha and not a star, but they speak of sun as star. They say sun is the luminous ones, sun, moon, the dark ones, Rahu, Ketu. That it's that's not the point. They know all of these things. They're calling it a graha because graha is a very specific implication, that which seizes consciousness, and it does not come from the Greco-Babylonian sort of ideas that Pingree and his people suggest, but as Atman, the inner self, the illuminating principle of all experience. So Pingree never reflected. Pingree and his colleagues never sat down with Sarva Atmata Jivanatha. This is just one fourth of the sutra. So if they had just contemplated one fourth of the sutra, this would have opened up a whole world of literature for them to understand Atman and what are these people talking about. It has nothing to do with Babylonian stuff. So Parashara honors Surya as the Grahapati, the lord of the planets. And one another sutra, it says Jagat Utpatti Karana. This is chapter 1 of Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. Cause of the world's unfolding, of Jagat, the world, your Jagat, which is your earthly experiences unfolding. It's the causer of that. It's a Nath, Divanath, inviting us to see Jyotish as the Veda Nayanam, eyes of the Veda, an instrument of pure vision and insight. It's not astrology or Vedic astrology, it's Jyotish. The Atma, the inner witness and experiencer, is not a fixed object but a movement of attention. This attention is the power to illuminate, to know, and to be fully present. It may flow outward, Baharatman, becoming caught up in objects, identities, and stories, which we are studying in Jyotish, in the entanglement, or it may turn inward, becoming still concentrated, get clarified, and ultimately free. So there's a soteriological implication of Jyotish that is not reflected on at all. Jyotish maps this movement of the sun. It reveals how the self is conditioned by karma, shaped by time, and influenced by the grahas, while itself being a graha, while itself being unconscious of its own nature and creating influence on the other grahas. While all the attention of sun is flowing outwards into name shape form of nam roop. Far from being mere astronomy, Jyotish is a psycho-metaphysical discipline. It studies how awareness takes form and how those forms can, in turn, reveal the nature of awareness itself. Jyotish offers a language and a method to see the self within time, within Kal, and to locate what lies beyond time. Akal, Mahakal, beyond Kal, acausal. It is not just astrology. So, translating Jyotish as simply Vedic astrology is both misleading and reductive. The modern word astrology often evokes shallow ideas, sun sign, personality, memes, vague predictions. It disconnects Jyotish from its deep metaphysical roots. The label Vedic is also overused and imprecise, often a catch all for anything ancient, mystical, or Indian. Jyotish is neither a belief system nor a fortune telling game. It is a method of perception, a way of seeing the structure of reality through light. Better terms to grasp its scope include, maybe you could call it Atma Vidya, maybe you could call it Surya Shastra, you could call it Kala Tattva. I personally like Sankhya Jyotish. Each points to Jyotish as a system for recognizing consciousness in form. It is about how we happen, where we are located in time, and what is seeing through us when we look. Why we look out of billions of possibilities and infinite possibilities, why we choose to only look a certain thing, the pattern. Jyotish is a living method of psycho-cosmic recognition, not superstition or mere mysticism of some sort. It's a rational system. It works with a certain logic. It has its own arguments, and it can be experienced through practice. And when it starts making sense to you, that's how you experience it. It starts to make sense, and you don't need to believe in it. You have to come with it a lot of skepticism and doubt. Then you go through it stage by stage and learn all its ways and procedures, and then you're like, oh, this makes so much sense, this is so true in my experience. The psyche is a structure, and then it has its whole own implications, own spiritual implications, that starts to create certain changes in your heart because of those realizations or realizations. So, psycho metaphysical essence and true scope of Jyotish. So, Jyotish is not merely a system of prediction or personality typing, it can be used for that. And it does a good job, and many astrologers, many Jyotishis use it that way, and they succeed beautifully. They can do it, they should do it, they love doing it, they research in that. Good for them. But for me, it is a profound psycho-metaphysical discipline that reveals the structure of consciousness itself as it unfolds in time and experience. The grahas are ontological agencies, not just physical planets or symbolic archetypes. They shape how experience is filtered, grasped, and remembered by the psyche. The sun anchors the continuity of self awareness, the inner light of presence, illumination, and attention is the key word. The moon, Chandra, uh, or Shashi, which means the one which is like a rabbit, fluctuating and bouncing and jumping. Monkey mind, what they call the monkey mind in Buddhism. We had a word for moon, we used to call it Shashi, the one like a rabbit. Governs the field of sentience, memory, emotional rhythm, and the reflective nature of the mind. It is the medium through which karma becomes felt experience. Rahu and Ketu embody the dynamic arcs, and you can visit the playlist, the Rahu Ketu files, and it has a lot of. I'm building a whole library of lectures on Rahu and Ketu and opening them up from different perspectives of human becoming and unbecoming. Rahu as compulsive and confused seeking and craving. Ketu as expectation, disappointment, and the eventual detachment. Between them flickers the present moment, the threshold of liberation. Jyotish offers a psycho spiritual map, guiding us not to identify with the conditioned movements of the grahas, example, I'm Saturnian and things like that, but to disidentify. You're not Saturnine, and see the transient patterns as phenomena moving through awareness. This leads to ontological clarity and gradual eventual freedom through other kinds of supporting practices from yoga and stuff like that. So, unlike modern astrology, often reduced to sun sign and vague horoscopes, Jyotish is a revelatory discipline of light, of Jyotish, a study of consciousness, Atman, as illumination, and of the psycho metaphysical structure, karma, time perception that shapes lived reality. It's very practical. It's not metaphysics as a armchair philosophy, and it's not psychology as shooting in the dark. It gives the psychologist a lamp, a jyoti, to walk in the psyche, in the psychic landscape. The structure, the fundamental structure of the psyche is Jyotish, and you get the lamp and you can work through that and bring awareness and understanding of the patterns and stuff. The purpose of Jyotish is not simply to predict what might happen, but to illuminate the ongoing process of how consciousness participates in reality due to certain complex, nuanced reasons. Sometimes it's very hard, and sometimes it's easy, pleasant, states of pleasure, aversion to pain, and uh, uh, more attachment towards pleasure. How karma manifests in the moment to moment feeling, and how one may progressively awaken beyond identification with conditioning. Jyotish also extends beyond the individual psyche into the collective and cultural realm, where the grahas function as organs of societal dynamics, shaping collective moods, visions, values, and historical rhythms. So there's a sociological study that can be done using Jyotish. It's a it's a phenomenal implication of a proposition where Jyotish can be used and has been, but can be used further to understand the collective unconscious, the nature and the structure of different societies. Ultimately, Jyotish is a psycho metaphysical sadhana, a disciplined practice of self inquiry and swadhyaya that invites gentle subtraction of false identifications and reveals the unchanging witness beneath the flux of becoming. It's lofty, sounds lofty, but it's the basis of Jyotish. That's where it starts. Same with yoga. Like, oh, you can know yourself beyond your body mind. It starts at like a matter of fact thing. It's like, oh, this is what we suppose, and then we practice and we find out that it was true. It guides one to live with presence, integrity, and love, embracing the paradox of becoming and unbecoming. If yoga, whether Maharishi Gautama's yoga, ways of yoga, or any other tradition, tantric or otherwise, any kind of yoking, union seeking, is the solution, then Jyotish reveals the problem statement, the prarabdha that we're dealing with, the torment of being, the moment of psychophysical and karmic self awareness. Jyotish is a study of torment of becoming. Whether you're in a state of pleasure and that doesn't seem like a torment at the moment, whether it's pain and the torment has become self evident, it's a study of the torment of being. What must I go through? What must I learn through, live through, and awaken myself through, and sort of work myself out of? How to undo the structures, how to understand the patterns, how to become conscious of the patterns and break the patterns. So thank you so much. My effort here is is simple. Jyotish is not Vedic astrology. It's Jyotish, and I hope I did justice. I am pretty sure I made certain errors, and I would want to make certain errors, in fact, and I would want you to point out those errors in the comments and teach me so that I can learn. I'm not presenting myself as a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. I am just a student like yourself of Jyotish. Jyotish is my teacher. We are learning together, and as students, I would make mistakes. You would make mistakes. When you make mistakes, we discuss. When I make mistakes, we discuss. So uh, let's get into a discussion about it if you would love to do that. And thank you so much if you stuck around till up until this point. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you.